without further ado, let me introduce Noel Wild.
I know from talking to some people last night that there's a lot of people here that are familiar with the work of Joseph Campbell, the professor who wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He studied myths from all over the world, folk myths, religious stories, and he discovered 17 common stages of development in a transformational story that is common in all of these myths. And the message of all of these stories, Campbell boiled down to, when we quit thinking about ourselves and our own self-preservation, we undergo a truly heroic transformation. That's the basic underlying story of all these folk myths from cultures all around the world. It sounds a little bit like customer centricity, doesn't it? I mean, maybe it's the business world's expression. Customer centricity is the business world's expression of what Campbell has referred to as the psychic unity of all humankind. Now, a common theme in a lot of these myths is you take the protagonist, and what appears to be the worst thing that could ever happen to that person ends up being the best thing that could have happened. And the process that I'm going to show you today, the process I'm going to discuss with you today, that was my personal experience with this. Because what was happening was I was experiencing what was the closest thing to a near-death professional experience I've ever had. I was totally desperate. And because of that, I came up with this process that's allowed me in the last year to write 3 full first drafts, when previously I would have told you, oh, it takes 9 months to write a first draft. And it's a simple process that I think can help any author write faster, write better, and with more clarity and more purpose. So I was working with an author, and we had a 4-month timeline because he had struggled for 5 months with another ghostwriter before firing her. So now we had a 4-month deadline with a publisher to publish this book, and we came to an impasse because he was trying to do a book that was very difficult. He's a marketer who had been working with a prominent social psychologist, and he had found a way to merge the social psychologist theory with marketing. The way he wanted to approach this was he wanted the first chapter to be, and this is after the introduction, the first chapter would be the history of marketing and what's gone wrong with it. The second chapter would be the professor's social theory. Chapter 3 would begin with what the book's about. So we're now if you count the introduction, we're now 20,000 words into the book before we're even going to discuss what the book's about. Well, I know that 1, that would be hard to read, 2, that would be very hard to write, and 3, when we handed it in, the publisher wouldn't buy it. So we'd have to completely redo it. But he thought that that was a logical progression, and honestly, I didn't have a good answer for him. And so I started, out of sheer desperation, I started searching out frameworks, models, anything that would give me a clue, that would give me a toehold into resolving this problem with the author. And what I discovered was this, and I can't even remember where I got it, and it is a standard business process stages: customer insight, objective setting, strategy development, tactical planning, execution management, results measurement. I looked at this and I thought, well, okay, he wants history. Well, you need customer insight to tell history. So we'll tell the history through the customer insight on his theory, not on marketing, but on his theory. We'll deliver the history of marketing through customer insight. Objective setting. Well, the objective setting is the next step, so we'll discuss the social psychology piece through the setting of the objectives in his theory, not the professor's theory. So basically, this gave me an opportunity to get some narrative motion going in the book, and it resolved the problem. It felt like we had squared the circle, because he was perfectly happy with it, as long as the history was being addressed, as long as the social psychology was being addressed. So then when we hit chapter 3, where he wanted the book basically to start, we were right into his theory, which was directly into strategy development. So I thought, this is great. This is actually reflecting a sort of a progression. Now, at the same time, I'd also looking for this life preserver to get through this experience, because If the book didn't work out, I mean, if I fell too far behind, he was going to fire me, and I couldn't afford that. And it would also be very embarrassing to the editor, who thought that I was going to save the day with this project. So it really wasn't, failure wasn't an option. I was looking at Joseph Campbell books, and especially a book that was written by a Hollywood screenwriter named Christopher Vogler, who has taken Campbell's theories and adapted it to Hollywood. And it's a very popular, his work is a very popular resource for Hollywood screenwriters, who are, by the way, the highest paid storytellers on earth. So they have to get it right. They work very hard to get it right. We all know how often they get it wrong, despite their best efforts. So here's the hero's journey as interpreted by Christopher Vogler. It's basically every story, every hero's journey begins with the ordinary world, and there's a call to adventure, and the protagonist immediately refuses. He has good practical reasons to refuse the call to adventure. He meets a mentor, which gives him advice on why he should seek the adventure, but he is still reluctant to go ahead until he hits the first threshold. Something horrible happens and casts him into where now he has no choice. He has to go into this other world, pursue this goal. He meets tests, allies, enemies, and this is the middle of every movie, is all the second act of every movie is all the meeting new friends, meeting new obstacles, meeting new enemies, being tested. Finally, the hero approaches the inmost sanctum, goes through a horrible ordeal, and wins the reward, wins the thing that he or she set out to get at the beginning. But it's not enough. Instead, the hero always takes the road back to share what he found with either, in the case of the myths, and I'll get to that in a second, but in the case of Hollywood, it's always something different, something important to share with everybody else, and in that way he is resurrected, in that way he is transformed into a hero.
Sounds like the Star Wars movies.
You've been peeking. Don't read my PowerPoint. And he has brought them the magic elixir, which is some sort of thing that, some sort of object that is of incredible value to the people. Now, the important thing to know is that in the myth, in the hero's journey in Campbell's thing, the myth worldwide is the same. And it's the freedom from fear of death, which gives one the freedom to live fully. That's the elixir offered by Jesus, by Buddha, and many, many others all around the world, which is why Campbell's book is called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, because this is the common theme. Free us from the fear of death, free us from fear, because then we can live fully. Star Wars. Luke is a bored kid on a desert planet. That's the ordinary world. The call to adventure comes. Princess Leia calls him for help, but he refuses out of obligation to the family. Obi-Wan Kenobi asks him to help Leia. What happens? His family is murdered by stormtroopers. Now he has no choice. He's got to leave. He's got to go save the princess. He meets Han Solo and the droids, and they go up against Darth Vader. They approach the inmost sanctum. They enter the Death Star to rescue the princess. They battle the stormtroopers. They nearly get killed, and they escape with the princess. They've got the reward, but it's not enough. Instead, he has to climb into a fighter craft, go back and destroy the Death Star using the Force, and is transformed in that moment into a hero. And the magic elixir that he's brought to his planet is he has the Force, and the galaxy for a time is at peace. Okay, well, that's a popcorn movie, and we all know that, okay. All right. So, I'm talking, what?
David called it.
Okay, well, he didn't call the next one. The Godfather. Michael Corleone is determined to escape, is a World War II vet determined to escape his family's grip. He is his father's favorite son, and he could easily be part of the family business, but he is married. He has a girlfriend, Diane Keaton, who is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. It's a rejection of his family, and he tells her at the wedding in the opening scene, this family, this is not me. His mentor, the Godfather, also wants Michael, a better life for Michael, wants him to lead a lawful life. But the godfather is nearly killed in a murder attempt, and Michael saves his father from a second attempt on his life at the hospital. And at that point, he has crossed the threshold. He realizes, I'm in this family. There is only one thing that we can do. We've got to kill the father's attempted assassin. We have to use our contacts. They'll only trust me because they know I'm not a guy who can kill people. So I'm the only guy who can do it. So he sits down for a peace talk. It's the inmost sanctum. It's probably the most intense scene in the film, where he sits down there, certain that he's not armed. Somebody's hidden a gun for him in the bathroom. He comes back out. He shoots them both in the head. At that point, he has to leave. That's the ordeal. And but as a result, he has to escape to Sicily, where he receives his reward, which is he falls in love with a beautiful young woman and marries her. And life is very peaceful in Sicily until she's killed by a car bomb meant for him, and he realizes he cannot escape his destiny. He returns to America, and after his father dies, he takes control and violently settles the family's business. He's transformed into the Godfather, and in the end, the magic elixir is he accepts the mantle of power, and the family legacy is his own. He's killed all the family's enemies, and so peace for a time reigns for the Corleone family. So now here's what caught my attention. Okay, so I showed you business process. I showed you the hero's journey. But here's what I stumbled across. What I saw when I lined these two up is the faint, what I would call the faint outline of a business parable. The ordinary world is customer insight. You want to see what's going on with people, what they want. Objective setting, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Oh, here we go. Customer insight, the ordinary world and the call to adventure is customer insight, right? The call to adventure is, let's try something new. Let's find out what people want. Meeting the mentor and refusal is all part and parcel of objective setting. Somebody has to take charge. Somebody has to set objectives. There's a sense of we do this, we don't do that. But the first threshold is strategy. Now we're actually forming a strategy. We're actually going to go in. We're going to do this thing. What is tactical planning or tactical action except tests, allies, and enemies? And then execution management, what does that mean? That means getting people to comply with the tactics and the strategies, okay? Is that an ordeal? I've never run anything in my life. Sounds like an ordeal to me, to get everybody managing, everybody pulling in the same direction. But the reward is results measurement. Now you can measure what you've done. But what's missing? Where does it stops at the reward, right? Because this is the ordinary business process. Business process does not allow for transformation. It just says, keep doing what you did. Keep going back and doing it over and over and over again. It's not business transformation. So what is the road back in business terms? Well, we don't go backwards in business, we go forward. It's the road forward. But what's resurrection? Resurrection is business transformation. And the magic elixir is you and your magic elixir. That's the subject of your book. That's what you're bringing to the people. That's what you're sharing. You've been through all this. You've been through the ordeal. The only reason you want to write the book is because the reward of making money doing what you do in your business isn't enough. Just like it wasn't enough to save Princess Leia. He had to go back and destroy the Death Star. He had to go back and set the galaxy right. If you're writing a book, you want to do these last three things. It's not enough to just measure results and count your money. You want to take the road forward, you want to share with people, you want to share the magic elixir. And in doing so, you want to tell the story of business transformation.